I am not having the most intelligent day. For those of you who catch the show right from the very beginning, I got outwitted by my own jingle there. Did you see that? Uh, Hello, everybody. And you can see I've got Deborah Ager with me. We'll talk to Deborah in a second. If you are an executive job seeker, if you've got an executive career and you want to level up and you want to know how to do all that, well, welcome. You're in the right place. This is the Executive Edge Show. There's a whole bunch of stuff we'll be talking about. Today, we're going to be talking about how to attract the attention of someone using the written word, whether that's going to be in a cover letter or social media post, that kind of thing. Because writing is seems to be a mystery around how to write well. Apparently, it's got some mythology to it that you got to go and find a cabin in the woods and pour your soul out. It doesn't have to be that complicated. And Deborah's going to make it a lot more simple for us. Before we get there, though, I want to do a couple of bits of housekeeping, as always. Those of you who are regulars to the show will know that I am a complete megalomaniac, and so I crave attention. So please fill up the comments, the chat box with your comments and your questions. Deborah's here live; she's going to answer the questions for you. If you're not watching it live, just give it a little hashtag replay, and we'll show you some love when we see that comment, even if you're not watching it live. But if you are, it's midday, it's Wednesday, and occasionally, only very occasionally, a little bit of Anglo-Saxon language slips out. So if you are watching it live, in fact, even if you're watching it on replay, maybe put your earbuds in or move to a room where you're on your own, just so you don't have to explain that language later. We're not talking about something that's going to make my language slip out. We're not talking about recruiters or CVs today, so that tends to be when the language gets a little fruity. We're talking about social media copy with Deborah Ager. Welcome to the show, Deborah.
Thank you for having me here, and it's great to see you, and thanks everyone who's attending or watching the replay later.
Yeah, and a huge thank you because we're live. And whilst it's a very civil midday here in the UK, it's 7 o'clock in the morning where you are. So yeah, no, so we were just talking about this off air about me being woken up at 6 o'clock in the morning by my 5-year-old and how unpleasant that is. I love her that I do. I'd rather it be a much more civilized hour. So I want to say a massive thank you to Deborah for getting up and being fresh and bright-eyed for 7 in the morning for us. So thank you for that, Deborah.
Of course.
For those of you who haven't spoken with you before, give us a quick introduction. Who are you? What do you do?
First of all, it's definitely worth it to get up at 7 a.m. for this show because this show is awesome. So thank you so much for having me here. My name is Deborah Ager. I'm founder of the Stories That Sell Mastermind, and I help consultants and also service providers to be able to create anti-boring content that helps them get more opportunities. And I also want to point something out. I work with a lot of business owners, like service providers, and sometimes job seekers are like, oh, that's not what I do. But the thing is, when you're a job seeker, you kind of are your own business in a way. Yeah. You're selling your skills. And even if you're an employer and you get a paycheck, in a way, you are your own business. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Paul, despite the fact it's midday, because I know Paul's in the UK. He wants to know whether or not you've had to have a double espresso to get this done.
I am drinking some green tea. So
yes.
So not the double espresso yet, but yeah, green tea definitely is helping.
Yeah, and Alina said exactly the same thing as I said to you off air, looking very good for 7 o'clock in the morning. You can tell that neither Alina or I are very early birds because I told Deborah I look like someone who's been dragged through the hedge backwards at 7 o'clock in the morning. I do not look anything like as polished and professional as you are. And also you're the best. And the sun is out in Andover. So who's watching? Where are you? What's the weather like where you are? Dive into the chat box, let us know. I'm going to kick things off, though, with the first question. What's the number one mistake you see people making when they write social media copy, Deborah?
There's a couple of things that are actually woven together. And one of them is that people are not consistent in their writing. And why is that? Sometimes it ties into this idea that they weren't born a writer. And so if anyone feels that way, hey, I wasn't born a writer, or, I was in school and I didn't receive good marks on writing, just throw all that out because that doesn't matter anymore. You can be a writer and you can learn how to do it. So I just want to make sure everyone knows that. And as for what I see as the biggest mistake, it's related to that, which is not addressing customer needs. And customer can be, the employer you want to have a job with. So kind of like not being consistent and not addressing customer needs, those two are very tightly connected.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, As it happens, I was amazing at English language and literature, and I got A grades across the board. How much of that do I use in writing social media copy now? None. Apparently, in social media copy land, you can just start a sentence with the word and it's fine. And so, yeah, a lot of that sort of structured, professional, grown-up grammar and all the rest of it goes out the window. Because when you're writing social media copy, you're writing not about you, but to and for the audience, and they speak the way they speak. All right, and you need to mirror that language, and that's not always, perfect Queen's English, is it? So, okay,
Right.
so ditched your preconceptions about what a writer is. It's not English perfection, and make sure you're writing about your audience or to your audience, yeah, rather than about yourself. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and one of the ways you can do that, just a tip in case anyone's wondering, well, how do I do that? Is think through when you think about your audience, what are the questions they're going to have about you? Some of the common ones are, can this person do the work? Does this person have the skills? Is this person trustworthy? And what is their character like? There's one person that I follow on LinkedIn, and he's constantly putting up stories about how he's donated money here, he's done this nice thing over there. He posts a lot of stories about his employees, and he even went to another country to visit them. So that's showing his character. And then potential clients can say, hey, I like this guy. I like what he's about. And then, they're also going to find out he can also do the work. But don't feel like you always have to be talking about your skills. You can also be talking about who you are as a person, because that's very appealing, especially when someone's looking for the right culture fit or for someone to fit into their work culture.
Absolutely. So if someone came to you and said, look, Deborah, I need some help with, with my social reader, what's the number one problem you solve for those who actually want to write? They've got over it. They decide they are going to write. They're okay with that. But now they've got, I've got problems. What's the number one you solve?
Yeah, the number one issue is just helping them become more fluent with writing so that they can get more opportunities, whatever those opportunities are, whether you want to be on a podcast, the radio, get a job, or something else. And sometimes job seekers, like at some point, they'll be like, maybe I should have a side hustle too, So it kind of opens up all these different kinds of opportunities for you to be able to consider. And developing that fluency comes from practice, and it comes from just being able to put crud on the page. A lot of times, like especially if we're reading books, we'll read books that have been through several editorial stages. It's been proofread. So lots and lots of people have read that manuscript. So then we go to our bookshelf and we look at things, we look at books and we think, oh my gosh, this writing is so good. I can never be this good. But we're not seeing that messy, horrible draft that the writer threw out months ago or months before the book was published. We're only seeing the final copy. So I want to remind people that when you're looking at writing that's out there, most of it is very polished and it has been seen by many people and reviewed. And so don't feel like your first effort has to be the same as someone's like 10th revision.
Yeah. There is this sort of semi-comedic depiction of writers where they all think their work is shit. And the thing is that depiction of a writer is the first draft depiction where it is shit. That's all writers. The first draft of anything is absolute garbage. But somebody said to me, it's much easier to edit than it is to write. So don't worry about the quality of the writing. Take a swing at it, vomit up on the page, and then start to hone and craft and edit it and meld it into something. But you can't create a perfect thing from the get-go. There is this iterative process, and it will go through, sometimes a dozen drafts. Hopefully not, but certainly several to get it perfect. And don't look at the finished product and think you got to aim at that. You haven't. Just go for the ugly, messy first draft, and that's everybody, right? Including some of the world-class authors. Their first draft is like, oh, wow, that's nothing like the finished product. That's absolute rubbish. So listen, let's say I want to write, I want to improve my copy. What are the sort of hints and tips you can give us? Give us the three things that we can do to polish up our capability.
Sure. I think first is understanding the writing process does involve what you're talking about, which is number one, just get whatever you can down on the page and get stuff out of your head. And if you write for a while, these ideas are going to flow out, which I can talk about a little bit more later. Then just know that you're going to have the draft stage, and then you're going to have a revision stage, and just think of those as stages that everyone has to go through. And it applies whether you're writing a book or whether you're writing a piece of content. These stages are the same, or whether you're writing an article. Writing is writing. And so these stages apply to all different kinds of writing. So once you understand the writing process, you can carry that through to whatever it is that you're working on. I also advise you to write 3 pages of junk a day. 3 pages sounds like a lot. It comes from the ideas of Julia Cameron from the Artist's Way book. And it could be 2 pages. You can make this up. There's also 750words.com if you sort of like to have that accountability. I had one of my students use that and was on this streak of like months and months, and he was so excited. And he was just writing about all these, things that were going on that were kind of stressy for him. And it really helped him clear his head. So then he could write the content that he wanted to be writing. So that's really important. The other thing is that when you do that, it sounds like drudgery. You can really write whatever you want. No one ever has to see it. And if you sit there writing for 2 or 3 minutes, or 2 or 3 pages rather, ideas are going to come out. I mean, that's just what's going to happen. Eventually your brain is going to move to something more interesting than like what you ate for breakfast. It's just going to happen. So I say, give it a try, see what comes up. The other thing is just to practice. So having practice, working with a teacher or mentor so that you can get that, really solidify your skills. Then you end up with a repeatable skill you can use forever. And then 3, put something out there and see how people react. Like, it won't be the end of the world if you put something out there, unless it's really egregious and horrible. But I mean, talking about something that's really going to make people angry. But if you're talking about your industry, if you're talking about your character, you're sticking to topics like that, just put something out there and see how people receive it. And then you can learn that way.
Yeah. I do exactly that last one. And for those of you who are an executive job seeker right now, you can do exactly what Deborah just suggested on LinkedIn. And you can use the medium of comments to do that. I haven't succeeded very well this week, but in weeks gone by, I've tried to put out 3, 4, 5 comments a day on stuff that I see that's relevant to what I do. Somebody talks about, CV, somebody talks about interviews, somebody talks about trying to find out what your niche is and all this stuff. It's all related to job seeking, and I comment. And if I do 3 or 4 or 5 a day, at the end of the week, I've got somewhere between 15 and 25 comments that I've made that week. And I reckon 3 or 4 of those comments take off. They got loads of likes, loads of people agree. I've got people engaging with my comment on someone else's post. And what do you think about this, Johnny? Whatever. And the rest just kind of, they're a nice comment, a couple of likes, and they kind of sort of disappeared into ether. Those 3 or 4, guess what gets worked up into a full post with my name at the top? Those are the subjects. You can use comments as reconnaissance for what your audience really resonates with. And no one thinks, oh, Johnny's content's so on point. I bet there was 75% more of content of that, or 3 times as much content that was rubbish. They'll just think I'm amazing. They don't see that 75% of my comments just died on the vine. They just, withered. They were just, they were okay, but there's nothing particularly spectacular about them, because it's only the 3 or 4 that really took off that week that get worked up into a post. And so you can use comments as reconnaissance, and then your writing is going to be on point because the audience loves what you're writing about. You've already tested that in the comments. So that little try it and see is a perfectly valid way of going about it. Practice, practice, practice as always. 750words.com. I'm going to go and check that out. I like a little bit of accountability because, as my team will tell you, there are some things that I just don't want to do. Unless I get an ass kicking, they're not going to get done. So maybe that's the way forward, a bit of accountability. So what do you do then? Like, it's a Wednesday, it's really sunny outside. I could just sack all this off and go for a nice walk in the sunshine, see the leaves, hear the birds, or I should do the thing I'm supposed to do, which is actually crank out, a dozen emails, which are going to go out this month. And I don't know, my motivation's not that high, Deborah. What do we do to fix that?
Well, I think you have a really, what you said about comments, I'm going to build on that a little bit, because when you leave comments on LinkedIn or another place, it is really cool to see what the reaction is. And it can also give you ideas. So what I did for a long time is I would save them in Trello. And so then I could go back and create posts from them later. So that leads into one of my suggestions, which is take notes. Like, I was at the grocery store a while ago, the market, and something interesting happened in line. So I wrote something about it. And, taking notes on the different kinds of things that happen. I was recently on a trip, some interesting things happened there. They might be worked up into stories. So here's one example. I went into a coffee shop in Lexington, Kentucky, and I found out that I could, those cardboard that wraps around the paper cup of coffee get, you could take these magic marker, you could pay $6, and kind of buy one of those. And it's like you're buying a drink for someone. And you could then dedicate that little cozy, I guess it's called, to whoever you want, like to an ICU worker at the University of Kentucky, to a football player, to a poet, whoever you want. So you can just leave it there. So I decided to do that. And then I took a pic. It was so much fun to go with the magic markers, yada, yada. So I'm going to turn it into a story that I share on social media. So people, it's just like something interesting that's a little bit different than what I normally post. So kind of doing that keeps me inspired, just looking at what happens in the everyday. Also, when you take notes, you can do it with paper, you can do it with Trello, you can do it with Evernote, you can do it with Google Docs. The idea of it doesn't matter, or the tool doesn't really matter. What matters is that you save the ideas somewhere. There's someone recently I read about who has a 100,000 word document of like all these different things that he's learned from life, like quotes, things that he's thought about. It's like a commonplace book is what he calls it. And so he keeps it all in this one big document. So that might be something you want to do as well, something to consider.
Who knew? I'm actually doing some of the things you're supposed to do. I have what I call I have two files on my G Drive, a swipe file and an ideas file. The ideas file is exactly what you just talked about, things I observe like that would make a worthy piece of post. And it might not actually, but I think it ought to. So that idea goes into my sheet. So at the start of the month, when I've got to crank out a month's worth of content, I've got an ideas file which is in for inspiration. But the second thing is I see other people do stuff and I think, oh, you've done that so well. And so I use that as an inspiration. And a lot of people do. That's true of all art. There's very little that's truly original now. People will be inspired by other artists, by other writers. And who was it? You might know this as a writer. Good writers borrow other ideas, other writers' ideas. Great writers just steal outright.
Sounds like T.S. Eliot.
Oh, yeah. So
Perhaps.
There you go. Not a bad writer. But, good writers tend to read a lot. They observe a lot. And, guess what? A lot of it gets recycled. There is somebody who had a bestseller, which was borderline plagiarized because it was just their perspective on it. It was a test case in Germany about whether or not that was plagiarism or not. And they literally wholesale borrowed, 2/3 of someone else's work, stuck it into their own book and wrapped it around something else. And it became a book in its own right. And apparently that was okay. So you don't sweat about, well, if someone else has said it, then you can't, because you've always got your take on it. You've always got your perspective on that, and your audience probably hasn't seen it. So just sharing it is a way forward. So listen, there's some of my ideas, but how do you get inspiration constantly? You say take notes. You say,
yeah. So I think giving yourself assignments or exercises in order to encourage play and experimentation. Now, a lot of times you might hear the word play. Like when I first thought about playing, I was like, I'm an adult. I don't do that. So
yeah, it sounds like I'm in a therapy session. Hold on a second.
Yeah. If you feel resistance to that, I don't blame you. So just think of it as like an experimentation of something that you can do. And so here's some examples of like what you can do. It's just about making games out of something. Like I was just listening to the radio a lot in this very long drive. They were talking about what can, one of the researchers is now a professor, but he had this very boring job picking up garbage in a parking lot, like a Walmart parking lot or something. And he's like, it was disgusting. It was boring, but he would try to make these games out of it. Like, can I pick up 10, of this kind of trash? How many bottle caps can I fit in my, little broom collector or whatever? So they were, they're not like, he had to get through something. So he was like, I'm just going to make games out of this. Yeah. So the point that I'm making is that this makes it more interesting. So make a game of it, and it can make it more interesting for you to sit down and do your writing. So for instance, choose 5 words from something you read, like an article. It could be anything. It could be blue, it could be cat, it could be painting, it could be, stellar or something like that. And then try to weave them together into a piece of writing. It works best if it's like verbs and nouns. And then see if can you weave that into a piece of writing, and does it take you in a place you didn't expect? Like we use these kinds of exercises all the time in my when I studied poetry at the University of Florida, and it's really about like how can we get our brains to like put forth the creativity so that we can really get our voice out there. And then another is take a snippet of conversation you've overheard and create a story around it. Like one I heard on an airplane, I was just like, everything this guy said was amazing. He was talking about bunkers in Colorado, and then he said something like, my mother left my dad the day after Christmas. I was like, oh my God, that's an amazing line. So anyway, if anyone wants to do anything with that, feel free to go ahead. But anyway, like it's those kinds of lines you hear, like interesting snippets of conversation that you can maybe make a story around. And like Johnny said before, you might write some stuff, and it doesn't mean you're going to use every single piece that you write, like with his comments and so on. So you might try some of these exercises or experiments and they won't work. And that's okay. If you get 1 out of 3, 1 out of 4, it's more than you would have had otherwise. So
yeah, gamify your writing. I love it. Gamifying your life. And it's true. If you're going to do it and you're not feeling inspired, then maybe gamifying will help it. We used to do it a long, long time ago, because I'm now about 112 years old. But back when I was a very young green salesperson, and we had to make a load of outbound sales calls to people that didn't want to receive those calls, it was not a lovely, fun job. All right, no one really wanted to crank those calls out, and so we would have a word that we had to use in the conversation, and we'd take it in turns to choose the word, and the word was invariably got nothing to do with what we were selling. So I wanted to talk to somebody about insurance recruitment. And so one of my colleagues chose the word baguette. And I'm like, how do I get baguette into a conversation about recruitment? And of course, it became a challenge. Now, of course, the smart thing about allowing that game to happen, and guess what? It was the sales manager who gave us this game to play, was that the challenge was to get the word into the conversation. But the result for the company was we were all having those bloody conversations. We weren't reluctant to pick up the phone. And so gamifying that sales hour, God, I'm talking so long ago now, it makes me cringe to think we did this, but gamifying that sales hour means that we were less reluctant to pick up the phone. You got more phone calls done, and it was just throwing mud against the wall. It was one of those hideous jobs. But gamifying it worked. So maybe, yeah, grabbing 5 words and how can I weave that into a story? Now there's a challenge and a prize. There's kudos of having done it. So yeah. maybe we'll do that. Right. So listen, so let's say you've done those things and, you're consistent and, you've accepted the fact it's not all going to be brilliant, but a few bits will be, and that's great. When you're low on inspiration, you can grab some ideas, and we talked about motivation. Now I've been doing it for a while. Okay. And I'm thinking I'm in a groove. And it's easy then for that groove to become a rut. And so how do I switch things up with my copy without completely taking a risk? Because I'm okay. I've got a bit of an audience. They're listening to my stuff, but it can be a bit samey and I don't want to lose them, but I don't want to take a risk, by giving them the same thing over and over again, or by switching it up and getting that wrong. So how do we do this? How do you de-risk switching it up?
Yeah, I'm not sure you can remove risk completely. So I might invite people to get comfortable with some element of risk, because putting anything out there, there's some element of risk. You might have a period or a comma in the wrong place, and then you get a bunch of emails about it or something. So I would think through, what it is you're really trying to accomplish with your content and the different kinds of opportunities you want to get. And then think through, what is it that people need to know? And then what is it that, from maybe people have heard of empathy maps. They're really useful for creating your writing. And so the empathy map asks, like, what is your audience thinking before they come your way? What have they tried before? So those are things that can kind of help you elicit more ideas from your brain in order to write about. And so if you're feeling like you don't want to do anything really perhaps more risky, like talking about what happened in a coffee shop in Lexington, Kentucky, or, buying a coffee for someone, you can try those kinds of, to see what kinds of ideas come up from asking yourself those questions.
Nice. Thanks for that. If you don't mind, I'm going to tack on a 7th question. Andrew popped up in the chat box. He said, how do you make what is often perceived as boring content, say retail banking credit risk, what a yawn fest that is, interesting? So,
well, I have a great answer. Stories. So what are the stories around that? What are the stories of success? So one thing I invite my students to do is to think through, what is the transformation you help people get? What is the outcome? What is the result? Whatever word you use based on your industry, people use different words. But what is it that they get from their experience with you, whether you provide a service or something else? So when you have that clearly identified, then you can create stories around it that help show what it is that people get. Like just the other day, I was talking about different words that we want to try to avoid in our writing. And one of them is important. And the reason why, it doesn't mean you can never use it, okay? You can still use it. But just if you're revising your work, look at the word important, look at the word best and great, and see, do you really need these words? So anyway, the word important, the reason why I picked that one is because you really want to show why what you do is important. You don't want to just tell someone that, your work is important or your work is good or your work is great, right? You need to show the person who's going to hire you for the job. So how do you do that? Through the stories that you're sharing about success. So for instance, back when I was looking for a job way back, I remember talking to one recruiter. I had a website. I had stories on there of things that I'd accomplished. And she was like, oh my God, this is great. So I got the sense that back then, not many other people were doing this kind of thing. And I always made sure I had stories when it came time for the interview so I could share those stories in conversation as well.
Yeah. So Andrew, I happen to know a little bit about your background. If you are writing if you're writing content to catch the attention of a CEO who wants to hire themselves chief operating or chief credit risk officer, then storify that content. It's about the emotional resonance. So a former CEO of yours might have felt insert emotion because the credit numbers weren't there, and you knew that the impact of that was that the wrong quality of borrowers was being onboarded, failing to repay, and the consequences to them were devastating. Wrecked credit records and all the rest of it, which is kind of counter to what you're trying to do as a bank, is that's improve people's lives by giving them the financial flex to do that. And so that made everyone sad. I mean, you probably use a better word than that, but and so you can punch the human interest function of that up by doing your magic, and the credit risk factor came down. Fewer lives are screwed over, and as a result of that, as an executive team, we all felt a lot happier. That is the journey your CEO is going to want to go on. They want to, do you know what? I am dicked off by our numbers right now because I know we're screwing people over, and I'd like to feel happier and proud of our work by having a low credit default rate. And that's the journey I want to go on. It's not about how you do it. The credit default rates is just spreadsheets, but the emotional journey that's attached to that for both the borrowers and the CEO is where you're sat between. If you can articulate that in a way that captures attention by storifying it, then I think you're home free, Andrew. So Deborah's on the money there. Thank you for that, Deborah.
And actually, I love that you say storify, because my process is clarify what you're trying to do, your audience, what you're offering, your skills and so on. Then storify, across social media, email, whatever tools that you prefer to use, your website if you have one, and then also amplify. So then how do you grow upon what you've done? How do you amplify, repurpose, revise, and so on? So clarify, storify, amplify. Those are the 3 steps that I always take people through in my mastermind and in my roundtable and so on.
I'm 1/3 of the way to being a professional writing coach.
Yes.
Not so much. Okay, then. If people want to find you on LinkedIn, this will appear in the comments for you any second now. LinkedIn.com/in/Deborah Ager. There you go. Very simple. I happen to know that every month Deborah hosts a live roundtable, completely free, to help you create the copy that will win you new opportunities and improve your writing and stand out. And so Deborah's business, Radiant Media Labs /roundtable. Get yourself onto that. Just a quick see if there's any other comments. Oh, Andrew's saying thank you. Both illuminating and trying to spreadsheets still making her. Obviously Andrew is a credit risk chief and therefore loves a spreadsheet, but I'm not certain it's going to be the most attractive facet of your job, Andrew. Let's get some emotional content in there by storifying that. And how to create effective content stroke copy that wins you new opportunities without spending hours on or using templates that make you sound like a robot. Is again your business, radiantmedialabs.com/stories that sell. We talked about stories just a second ago, so some really good stuff there. All right, connect to Deborah there, go to the round table there, and storify your content there. And last thing, something that's very, very close to our audience's heart, is how to write your own anti-boring introduction letter. Those cover letters with CVs. Wow, if I've read one 1,000 times. It's the same one over and over and over again. Dear sir, please find attached my CV in respect of the application for. I already want to shoot myself. I just, it's like that's the 1,000th letter. I still don't know what's interesting about you, and I'm 2 lines in. So maybe you can punch that up. radiantmedialabs.com/anti-boring query letter, which I've heard you talk about that in detail on a previous show, and they're funky, really cool ways of catching people's attention. So thank you for all of that.
Sure.
And now then, if we've got lots of comments here. By the way, all that stuff's appearing in the comments right now as live links, so you can go and click on those. Let's go to banners. Let's flip that off. There you go. Now, if you thought you liked what you heard today and you want to share that with other people, then I will reward you for doing so. Jump online, jump onto LinkedIn and do a quick note. Just saw Wednesday's hashtag The Exec Ed Show with @Johnny Walker and @Deborah Ager, and then sling down what you thought. Yeah, good, bad, or indifferent. And you'll do that for 2 reasons. One is, if someone else has seen this show and thought there was a value and would help out an executive job seeker, then you'd want them to share it. So, let's not have it as a one-way street. Let's do the sharing. Yeah, you're on the show. So do a 1-line post. Just saw the Exec Ed Show with Johnny Walker and Deborah Ager. And how you do that is on the screen right now. And then put your 1 line down. And because you use that hashtag and that @ symbol, Deborah and I will be alerted to the fact you've commented about us. And then we will pile in with a link to a replay of the show so that other people who are reading that post will be able to see the show. And that's you paying it forward. Thank you for that. However, a second thing will occur. Between Deborah and I, our networks exceed 15,000 people on LinkedIn. And our networks get alerted that we've commented on your post with the replay link. And so a portion of that network will have a little gamble over at your profile to see what it is we're commenting on. Why is Johnny and Deborah commenting on that thing? What's all that about? And then you're going to get a truckload of eyeballs on your profile, which if you're looking for work is a good thing. And there's your reward. 2 people last year got their ideal job just from the sheer power of large numbers. All right, just from somebody saying, oh yeah, no, we're in Johnny's network. Let's go and have a look at the thing he's commenting on. Oh, I get it. They've just watched that show. Hold on a second. Isn't that person like the person we're looking for right now? Before you know it, they ended up with an interview and got their job. And so it's just having a big network, which we can lend you if you did a one-line post. Yeah. And lastly, before we wrap up, because we're now on the half-hour mark, tomorrow, 2:00 UK time, live only, no replays, no recordings. I'm going to do a masterclass on executive CVs. Okay, not like the usual masterclasses of the rest of this year. This is going to be all coaching. I'm actually going to open up the Executive Edge program that I run and rip out the CV module from it and share it with you. All the good stuff. All right. So that is a full bore masterclass. Do not turn up late for that. You'll miss a load of good stuff at the beginning. And one lucky person is going to win the full £2,500 Executive Edge program in full. That comes with a 100% money back guarantee of getting your ideal job and faster and for more money and without you having to sell yourself. It is that good. Hundreds and hundreds of people have used that program to succeed, but you can't win it unless you're on the masterclass live. All right. You can't register and then not show up. If you don't show up, you don't win. So turn up for that masterclass tomorrow at 2, and the link for that is in the comments. I want to say a massive thank you to Deborah for sharing today all of that really cool stuff. Super happy with that. Wow, where are you right now? Because you were in Kentucky, but you're now...
Right now I'm in Maryland, right outside Washington, D.C. So I just drove back from Kentucky, which is over 1,000 kilometers, kind of a long way.
Yeah, that's the thing about the States, right? You popping around the corner is about a 6-hour drive. It's just,
I know. It's so crazy. It's great to be here. This show is fantastic. And I know your program is awesome too, because you've helped so many people with it. So people should definitely check it out if they haven't already. And this is just...
I appreciate that. This show is not to shill for the program. If you really want to know about the full program and you don't fancy, your chances of winning, then but just direct message me. So Paul's saying, is the CV masterclass recorded? It's not, Paul. It's live. Do or die. Oh yeah, there's an ebook that I've written. There you go. Some of my own writing. There's a 7 steps to 6 figures. 30 pages of pure gold. Go get that. But that's it, guys. I look forward to seeing your one-line posts on LinkedIn now. But for now, all I'm going to say is thank you, Deborah. Woo!
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Take care.
Take care, everybody.